Hello all of you beautiful little demons, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and awfully hosted Tues Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval themed format where I, the crown Jules of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you, yes you the person who has shaved their beard, shaving about 10 years off, but revealing my very weak chin. Yes, you get to decide what list I dole out to you each and every week. And this week we have none other to thank than Rob Daniels for their suggestion of video game remasters that we demanded and then instantly regretted. And here's the thing, they always say be careful for what you wish for, and in the case of these video game remasters, that was definitely the case, because of the video game remaster, it should be something amazing. It should be allowing a niche game to be plucked from the annals of history and then dusted off, added a bit of polish, a little spit shine, and then chucked out onto the new gaming marketplace for all new fans to enjoy, right? While us oldies just sit there and stroke our admittedly shorter beards and say, yeah, I told you it was a great game. But unfortunately, some remasters are anything but. Because the only new feature on these 8 video games now comes with added stink lines, and it makes you wish that you never begged the developers to give your favourite title another day in the sun. So let's take a look at them today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video game remasters that we demanded and then immediately regretted. And you know the drill by now. Say hi to me here in the live chat and put your suggestions for next week's episode down in the comment section below. And as a little added surprise, James, he's back editing today, which is amazing. Although I've now given him a heart attack to start this list off, which we should be getting on with, so let's do such. Number 8, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Now, while not being as well received as some other mainline entries into the Final Fantasy franchise, Crystal Chronicles found a lot of favour with GameCube fans upon its release back in 2004, mainly due to its wonderfully cute art style that made you go, "Oh, how cute!" and its interesting approach to battling, which made you say, "Oh, I'm dead!" Therefore, it was to the applause of many when it was announced that Crystal Chronicles, also known to fans as CRYSIS, would be making its way to non-Nintendo consoles in 2018 alongside a slew of updates, new dungeons, and the ability to take this title online with cross-play elements, which quite obviously was the main selling point here of this remaster. However, the rounds of applause that this remaster's announcement was generating soon turned to groans of frustration, because it turned out that there was another element to the cross-play feature, and that was that mobile phone users would also be allowed to enter the fray. Oh gee whiz, fantastic. That was akin to swapping a baby's milk bottle with another bottle containing nothing but food bin squeezings. The reason why this is so utterly terrible is that it placed a huge limitation on the online aspect of the remaster, as now everything was boiled down to the bare essentials to make sure that it worked on phones, meaning that parties auto-disbanded after every single dungeon and online chat was basically non-existent. Add to this the constant connection issues and the fact that this remaster removed local multiplayer, which would have been a workaround for the terrible online connectivity, and you actually had a remaster that offered less than the original. Good going, Square Enix. That actually took some effort. Number 7, the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy. What have you done to my boy? You know what, James? This isn't working, mate. I want you to add in the actual rain. More rain effects, please. Do the rain from the trilogy thing so that people can understand how upset I am about this. Ah, there it is. There's the pain I'm looking for. It's like shards of glass going into my retinas. Seriously, what can be said about this remaster disaster that hasn't already been yelled about before, seeing as this was literally the talking point of the entire industry when the supposed definitive editions of the original GTA trilogy were released in 2021. To call this remaster a bit of a miss is like saying that trying to slay a T-Rex with sarcasm alone is a bit challenging. And you know what? That's what Rockstar did with this entire situation. They listened to the vocal backlash, they gobbled it up, and they walked away doing this with their tiny arms. Oh, we just made so much money. Endless complaints about textures and bugs pushed this collection into the mainstream, and soon the refund requests were pouring in as support for this game was bleeding out. In every single way, this was the worst way to experience these classics, and yet it was somehow about to get even worse. And I say that because fans soon realized that Rockstar had delisted older versions of these games from digital storefronts, meaning that this now definitive edition was now the only way to play this trilogy. Somehow, against all of the odds, Rockstar had managed to master alchemy, yet instead of turning lead into gold, they turned a diamond into pure shit. Wicked. Number 6, Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Nintendo sure are a weird company, aren't they? I mean, for every bit of marketing that paints them as a family-friendly company, they always have this weird way of rewarding that affection that fans show them by, I don't know, repeatedly gouging them again and again and again with high, overpriced remaster bundles and time-limited exclusives. What's going on here? I'm speaking, of course, about the curious case that is the Super Mario 3D All-Stars pack, which is quite possibly a collection of Nintendo games that have received the most requests for a remaster. And on the surface, it is a wonderful package containing Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, which all got a coat of new paint and some quality of life fixes. Also, we were led to believe, as alongside a bizarrely disgusting and oily practice using FOMO to try and sell the game quickly by telling people that this was a timed, limited release and the fact that you should buy it now and never ask questions about it, they also had a bit of a weird way of choosing which games to use as the basis for these remasters, because they actually included an inferior port of Mario 64. Now, this version of the game actually removed a lot of glitches and skips that many speedrunners relied upon, and thus instantly this version was lower in value for this rather sizable community. Add in a whole load of absolutely nothing extra for the other two games and you have a package that appears to be all smiles and Mario Sunshine on the surface, but is actually a black hole of corporate greed that not even Galaxy could hope to survive. Number 5, PARAPPA the Rapper Remastered. Now, when you first lay eyes on the PARAPPA the Rapper remaster, it might not actually be immediately clear as to why this remaster is so utterly stinky. The graphics look polished and sharp, the music is, as was in the original, on another level for how comedic and catchy it is, and of course the premise of a rapping dog looking to win the love of a sunflower is just so utterly out there that it almost demands your attention. However, things became abundantly pungent the moment you actually start playing this game, or should that be, attempting to play, as this rhythm action game contains precisely the one thing that all titles of this genre should go to the ends of the earth to avoid. James, will you give me a drum roll, please, using whatever utensils and stuff you have lying around your desk? That is acceptable. It contained lag. Horrendous amounts of lag. In a game about rapping on beat, this is a cardinal sin, as now in order to beat the levels, you've got to either anticipate the next string of inputs or wait until you're out of sync with the music in order to hammer home the bars. And because PARAPPA is synced with your inputs, he'll then rap his lines out of time, throwing you off even further. And to add salt to the gunshot wound to the face that is this remaster, there are no options to recalibrate the audio and video. Oh, it's happening, boys! 2 thumbs up! Stinky. It turned this little pooch's saying from "I gotta believe" into "I can't believe you've done this." Number 4, the Silent Hill HD Collection. So we begin this entry, James, with a question. When is a remaster not a remaster? And the answer, as quizzical as it may sound, is when it's the Silent Hill HD Collection. Why? Well, I'll bloody well tell you, mate. Because despite being marketed as a remaster of Silent Hill 2 and 3, my kingdom for Silent Hill 1, it turned out that this was actually a near 100% remake of these two games. Now I hear you cry, why would Konami hire developer Hijinks to fully recreate 2 of the most well-loved horror video games, and say it with me kids, of all time? But the answer to that, my friend, is that Konami, in their infinite wisdom, had commissioned a remaster of 2 games that they had actually lost the source code for. That's right, they didn't have the framework to give to the developers to start remastering them, so they had to basically recreate the game themselves. Fantastic. Is it any wonder that the game feels so slightly off, like it's some sort of uncanny valley of video gaming, where your actions kind of lag behind your inputs, but not so much that they're fully noticeable enough to be complaining about, but just enough to make you realize that they're there, or where enemy AI seems to have to load information before kicking into gear, and of course, who can forget where there's no f***ing fog whatsoever in a game that uses fog so much that it might as well be an extra character. You can imagine it sitting there on the panel at like Comic-Con. It's like, oh, Mr. Fog's over there, let's go get an autograph. Just drop the pen through him. It's misty thing. It's just damn bit of paper. I'm gonna sell this on eBay. Yes, that's right, the thick fog that blankets Silent Hill was nowhere to be found in the original release of this HD collection, meaning that you could see all of the nasty draw distance issues pop in, and of course enemies that look like they've had their action cancelled in The Sims and are just waiting around to die like absolute lemons. Great stuff, right? Now admittedly there was a patch that added the fog back in, but for a while this was the absolute hits, my friend. Number 3, CRYSIS Remaster. Now back in the day, even mentioning the word CRYSIS near your PC hardware was likely to send it into utter meltdown, such was the sheer stonking heft that this game required in order to actually play it. Hell, the majority of games nowadays are only just getting up to par with the lighting and shading effects of this 2007 release. But thanks to its immersive gameplay, and because high-end players were able to loudly stroke themselves to climax over being able to run this beast, CRYSIS soon became the talk of the town, much to the chagrin of console players who had to settle for a still pretty impressive but definitely far from perfect downgraded port for the Xbox 360 and PS3. Yet in 2020 it seemed that console players would finally be able to experience the full might of CRYSIS' swollen bulge, as it was announced that Xbox One, PS4 and even Switch owners would be getting a remaster of the original. Rubbing their hands together in glee, console players pre-ordered the game in droves, only to be met with utter disappointment when the remaster dropped. For you see, this wasn't a remaster of the PC original, no, this was a remaster of the aforementioned downgraded port that they'd already received on the previous console generation. Eep. The graphics were indeed polished, but still were found lacking by many, and an entire level was cut from the experience, as was also true of the original port, making this the least requested remaster of the most requested game. Thankfully, more graphical options and the Ascension level were added back in, but for many, even with these fixes, it was still lagging far behind the PC original. Number 2, Halo the Master Chief Collection. Now, I have written an entry for Halo the Master Chief Collection, but I can already see that James over here is starting to fizz, like he wants to say something, so I'm going to pass the floor over to him. James, please take my mic.
So Jules actually wrote me a script for this entry, but I'm not going to read it because I'm a silly goose and I feel like I've got enough anger in me about this weird collection of a game and this entire franchise as a whole that I'll tell my own story. So in 2014 at Christmas, I got the game alongside my Xbox One and I was so excited in fact that was the only game that I wanted. So when I plugged it in and I realised that the servers for multiplayer didn't work, the servers for the campaign co-op didn't work, the entire UI was just an awful mess. I was so disappointed. Like, as an Xbox One owner, that was the biggest slap in the face, because on the other side of the fence, the PS4 owners, they got everything that year. They got Knack. I can't think of anything else. They got Knack. But Xbox One, that was the only game that we had, and it didn't work. It was so upsetting. And yes, 5 years later, in 2019, the game finally began to work as they ported it to the PC. But it took that long. Also, they gave us Halo 3 ODST and Xbox Live as compensation for the issues, but funnily enough, with that Xbox Live we couldn't play the game because the servers didn't work, so that was just a waste of the month that we was given. Halo, man. It's just a single sigh from me.
And number 1, Ape Escape on the Loose. From its ridiculous premise of grabbing gibbons across time and space to its horrendous voice acting on the UK PS1 original, to the fact that the soundtrack to this game slaps so hard it will leave you with cheeks redder than a baboon's, Ape Escape is just a pure slice of fun that is so very much needed in gaming in this day and age. And of course, who can forget that this game was pretty much built from the ground up with the dual stick analog controller in mind, and made use of those lovely thumbsticks by allowing you to access gadgets and different moves on the fly. It was just so delicious. It took an already great game and elevated it into the pantheon of gaming greatness. But apparently people who could forget were the minds behind Ape Escape on the Loose, because they decided to remaster the original game for the PSP, which, lest we forget, is a console with only one analog control thumbstick. Talk about slipping on a banana peel. While the game itself was received fairly well, the lack of a second thumbstick was painfully apparent, as now gadgets and certain moves had to be accessed through the face buttons, killing movement entirely in some cases and making the game infinitely harder than it was originally designed to be. To call your game on the loose while heavily restricting player movement and control input seems rather ironic upon reflection, right? And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 video game remasters we demanded and then instantly regretted. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below, as well as your suggestions for next week's episode. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, or you can swing by over here and follow James Dowsey with the extra E, who's probably put some delicious meme up to the left-hand side here. Go show him some love. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Even though we covered some remasters that were a little bit on the disaster side, I encourage you in your real life to constantly keep looking to better yourself, to perfect what you already might think that you've perfected. Because trust me, we can always go that one step further to becoming a better human, both physically, spiritually, mentally, whatever it is. Just keep trying to push and break that mold, because honestly, you will start living a healthier and happier life the better and more focused you become on your life goals. Big love to you, and I hope that you go out there and smash them today. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.